not thinking of letting this happen!
What choice do we have?
Mount Doom has sprung to life, and nothing is going well for anybody in Middle-earth. Unless you're an orc, in which case, enjoy your new home. Welcome to ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Arey, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed from episode 7 of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Almost every main character in this episode is questioning their actions, from Galadriel to Theo to Nori Brandyfoot. Despite their best intentions, all of them seem to think,
I've made a huge mistake.
When Galadriel wakes up from under a pile of ash, we get our first look at the new and not improved Southlands. Though it hasn't been given the name Mordor yet, it definitely looks like the Mordor that Tolkien describes in his writing, and the Mordor that we see in the Lord of the Rings movies. Characters stumbling around and coughing repeatedly made us think of Boromir's description of the land in the Fellowship of the Ring.
The very air you breathe is a poisonous fume.
Isildur, Valinor, and Queen Muriel tried to save some people from a burning house, but they pay the price for doing the right thing. Muriel gets a load of spark and ash in her face, and Isildur gets covered by the flaming debris.
Is he dead?
Well, everybody in the episode thinks he is.
That doesn't answer my question. Is he dead?
No, Isildur is a pivotal figure in Tolkien's lore, and if he was taken out of the picture, then the Lord of the Ring itself wouldn't happen.
The ring passed to Isildur, who had this one chance to destroy evil forever.
Wait, what the heck, Doug? There must be like a dozen cats in here. Here's one of them.
Yeah, those are my friends. At least I think they're my friends. They came to borrow money, but now they won't leave because they don't respect me.
Doug, you're the manager and a dog. I mean, you have the authority to tell these cats what to do.
But I am so small.
All right, we're gonna have to find some way to give you some authority. So, what was I saying? The Harfoots are almost at their destination after sitting out the last episode, and we start to get worried when they smell smoke and think that someone is baking.
Just smell that. Wood smoke. The others must have started baking.
No baking. The fiery spit of Mount Doom's eruption has spread far and wide, and the grove that the Harfoots have been trying to reach has now been scorched. The evil that was unleashed has now reached the purest beings of all. They still have the stranger though, and with each passing episode we're even more convinced that he's Gandalf. That guy pulling the cart is the perfect image of a Fisher-Price My First Gandalf playset. Unlike the Hobbits of the Third Age, the Harfoots are not entirely ignorant of the happenings of the larger world. Sadoc Burrows is especially knowledgeable, giving a bang-on guess about what caused this.
My great-grand used to speak of mountains to the south that could spit fire rock.
Now, though the Hobbits mostly have no idea that Sauron returns in Fellowship of the Ring, Sadoc was aware that
A new evil is rising.
Now, we should mention that the Hobbits in the movies are largely unaware. The Hobbits in the novels get attacked by ring wraiths, and Frodo and friends return at the end of Return of the King to discover that Saruman has ruined the place.
A new power is rising.
Though they have been completely distrustful of the stranger up to now, the Harfoots want him to try and fix this ruined grove. He tries, but his magic still isn't completely up to snuff, and Nori knows this from personal experience. This is likely why she and Poppy are reluctant to ask for his help. Sadoc asks him anyways. After a moment that looks like the reverse of the two trees being poisoned in the premiere, the Enterprise is deemed a failure.
Is it really a failure though?
No, but more on that later. Hey Doug, guess what? I have the perfect solution to give you the confidence to ask all of your cat pals to leave.
Is it a rubber band?
Even better, I got you a certificate from Established Titles. They're the sponsor of this video.
But how is that gonna help me?
Well, Established Titles allows you to purchase 1 square foot of land in Scotland, which makes you a Scottish landowner, and according to Scottish custom, this allows you to have the title of Lord or Lady. My own land is on a private nature reserve in Edelston, and my purchase helps to preserve their woodlands. See, that's the cool thing about this certification. It isn't just a novelty gift, it helps protect the woodlands of Scotland. With every order, Established Titles plants trees all over the world through their charity partners One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. You get this certificate with an official crest and a unique plot number so you can see the exact location of your land. And then you'll be allowed to officially change your name to Lord or Lady, and you can have it on your credit cards or plane tickets or even your dating profile. It also makes for a terrific last-minute gift. They even sell couples packs so your land can be beside your loved ones. I mean, just look at some of these reactions.
Lord Joe Green.
Yes!
Lord Kenneth Delane Albertman.
All right. Hey, look at that.
You will be calling me Lord!
Now right now, Established Titles is running a huge fall sale. If you use the code ScreenCrush, you get an additional 10% off any purchase. Established Titles told me that the first 200 people purchasing a title pack with my link will effectively be next to my plot or just within walking distance. So depending on how many people want to be a lord or lady, we can have our own little ScreenCrush kingdom. So go to establishedtitles.com/ScreenCrush to get your gift now and help support our channel. And Doug, maybe being a lord will give you the confidence to ask your friends to leave.
Okay, well I'll try.
No, there is no try.
Do.
Elrond is back at playing diplomat, making promises to the dwarves. They aren't necessarily at odds with them, but they question whether they can accept Elrond's promises. King Durin remarks that Elrond has picked up a few words of Stone Tongue, and he may be referring to Khazad-dûl, the secret language of the dwarves. This language was rarely shared with any outsiders, even elf friends such as Elrond. Tolkien wrote that certain elves, such as Feanor, were able to learn Khazad-dûl, but this included the lore masters of the Noldor. Elrond could have learned some of these languages through these lore masters. Now, though the series has shown other elves condescend to Elrond because of his half-elven nature, he uses it here to his advantage.
But Elrond half-elven, and I see in elves that which they cannot see in themselves.
Now, when he says this, we see that Elrond has a wisdom that extends past that of the elves alone. This is likely why he is able to call a council of many races together in Fellowship of the Ring.
You've been summoned here to answer the threat of Mordor.
He doesn't seem to respect the other races as much as he does here, however.
They hide in their mountains seeking riches. They care nothing for the troubles of others.
King Durin talks with his son alone, and aside from another name drop of the Valar Lu, he evokes a combination of elements that we saw in the very beginning of this episode.
He crafted us of two elements, fire and rock.
When he speaks of the fire within all dwarves, which knows the truth that one day all things must be consumed, he holds the corrupted telltale leaf of Linden, the sign that the kingdom of the elves is in grave danger. His wariness not to help the elves is not unwise. It would, as we now know, require the mining of a great deal of mithril. He is unwilling to take the risk, and everyone believes that it is a cave-in or some other mining danger that he is worried about.
That's not entirely accurate.
At least we don't think so. Even though they would be mining the mithril for a good cause, he could be concerned about delving greedily and too deep. We know what happens when the dwarves of Khazad-dûm eventually do that, and it didn't result in the mountain caving in.
The dwarves delved too greedily and too deep.
You know what they awoke, and just in case you need a reminder, you'll get one towards the end of the episode.
Durin's Bane.
As far as King Durin is concerned, if the elves' time is up, it's up.
The fate of the elves was decided many ages ago by minds much wiser.
So we would say that the minds he's thinking of are the Valar, and that this is a direct contrast to how his son is thinking. King Durin sees a bigger picture and believes in the will of the Valar. Prince Durin is only concerned about helping his friend. He warns about what could happen about defying their will, and he is speaking of the Valar. And if he is speaking of the Valar, and he almost certainly is, this is a portent for a completely different storyline. There are those on this show who are all too ready to defy the Valar.
What have the Romans ever done for us?
Wait, who's the Valar?
But the Valar are the servants of the being who created the world, and they helped to create Middle-earth and all the other lands. So all it takes is one look from Durin and Disa for Elrond to realize that his proposal has been turned down.
Don't suppose I can elbow you into staying for dinner?
Gil-galad must be informed.
And they use a certain elvish word to part ways.
We say no.
Namarie.
This elvish word comes directly from Tolkien, and it is heard more than a few times in the Rings movies.
Namari.
It's usually translated to mean farewell, though scholars would say that the literal translation is to be well. Elrond's addition of go towards goodness does not come out of nowhere, as some translations of the partial word marie do mean goodness.
Is anyone on this show even gone towards goodness?
Not even a little bit. When Prince Durin sees this, it lets us know that Gil-galad and Celebrimbor weren't full of it when they told Elrond about what mithril would do for the elves.
Maybe make some rings out of it.
Well, there's always next season for the rings, Doug. Galadriel seems to finally realize that she's gone too far when she tells a vengeful Theo that
It is over.
in her mind, all of this is her fault. Her pursuit of vengeance led directly to it. When Elendil reunites with Queen Miriel, he is told that Isildur is dead.
Where is my son?
So he is dead.
Well, you never know what this show's gonna do, but no, he's not dead. That moment did remind us of this, though.
Where is my son?
When Galadriel gives Theo her sword, it evokes her possibly hanging up her arms and preparing to leave the battlefield. She still has Finrod's knife, but since one of the Rings of Power is in her future,
If they ever show the Rings of Power,
then she won't need a sword when it comes time for her to fight. Muriel discovering that she has gone blind is something new for the character and not something that Tolkien included in his writing. But it makes sense, however, as her father has the gift of foresight, and Muriel herself has already had visions of doom. These far-seeing visions are now in direct contrast to her regular sight. Aside from that, Muriel could continue to be figuratively blind as to what will continue happening in Numenor itself. After he caused havoc with the tree, the Harfoots are sending the stranger off on his own. Sadoc references Greenwood the Great.
They call it Greenwood the Great,
which is the large forest that will eventually become corrupted and renamed Mirkwood. Was the stranger's magic ineffective though?
It wasn't.
Well, it took time, but life begins to return to the burned out trunk. This made us think of the single white flower growing on the tree of Gondor prior to Aragorn's arrival, even though that was invented for the movie. When Nori Brandyfoot rethinks every action she's taken on the show thus far, she instantly connects us to Frodo Baggins.
I wish none of this had happened.
She's also saying this in a roundabout way.
I made a huge, tiny mistake.
When Galadriel and Theo camp for the night, she mentions how she lost her brother, and then she drops this bomb.
And my husband,
Husband?
Celeborn.
What?
Her talk of meeting Celeborn while dancing in a glade of flowers evokes how Tolkien wrote about Beron's first meeting with Luthien. Aside from that, Galadriel says that the last time she saw him, he was going off to war. In Tolkien's writing, the two of them married in the First Age, which tracks with what she says here. He certainly didn't die though, as he is present in both the books and the movies of The Lord of the Rings.
So he's dead on this show?
Well, I don't see how or why they would do that. It would be a major change from both the lore of the books and the movies, and would create a gaping inconsistency whether you're a book fan or a movie fan.
But Galadriel said that he's dead.
And the other said that Isildur is dead.
Maybe he is.
He's not, and neither is Celeborn. Our theory is that Galadriel will be reunited with Celeborn at some point, and that he could be a prisoner of Sauron or some other dark forces. She only thinks that he's dead.
Can you say Celeborn 5 times fast?
Yes, but I won't because I have nothing to prove to you. After Galadriel drops the Celebomb, it's Theo's time to take responsibility for everything bad that has happened.
I've made a huge mistake.
Galadriel's words of comfort to him show even further how taking on the burden of her brother's death and finding Sauron has become an obsession that led to disaster. It's not news to us, but she is aware of it now. When she gives him more wisdom,
there are powers beyond darkness at work in this world.
It once again brought us back to this scene from Fellowship.
There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil.
And this is probably our favorite episode for Theo as a character. That's not a reference, a symbol, or a connection. It's just something that I'm saying. When Galadriel and Theo hide from the orcs here,
What is it?
We could not think that it is composed exactly like this classic scene. There's a fair amount of sniffing in both scenes too. When Durin and Elrond go mining, Elrond comes clean about the only lie that still stands between him and Durin.
Dead in our contest.
Did it?
It turns out that was yet another clever ploy by Elrond half-Elven. The Elrond-Durin friendship might be one of the best relationships on the show, and that means that our hearts are surely going to end up being broken.
I always thought you were mighty dwarvish for an elf.
And you are a rather elvish dwarf.
When Durin says that dwarves have secret names that are not shared by outsiders, this is also taken directly from Tolkien. This goes even deeper than the dwarf tongue not being generally known. Tolkien reveals this bit about dwarf names in the appendices of The Lord of the Rings.
Dwalin, Balin, Kili, Fili, Dori, Nori, and Ori.
And what are their real names? Well, we don't know. Gimli isn't Gimli's real name either. Tolkien very, very rarely shared a dwarf's true name.
I have a secret name.
Ooh, what is it?
It is also Doug.
Very good. Even though Durin finds a huge deposit of mithril, his father is furious. They have found it without a cave-in or an accident of any kind, which makes us think even more that King Durin is afraid of a much darker danger. Prince Durin has already said that being worthy of the name of his father is one of the deepest honors of any dwarf. It is because of this that his father pretty much disinheriting him hurts all the more. The good news for the Harfoots is that their grove has now been fully restored thanks to the stranger. The bad news is that the stranger's use of magic has seemingly drawn the attention of Middle-earth's worst emo folk trio. They are definitely in pursuit of the stranger, and as many viewers pointed out, one of them bears the same design as the star formation that the stranger is looking for. Nori lies about where the stranger went, but these mystics, as they are likely referenced on the show's soundtrack, are not so easily fooled.
Okay, so who are these people?
That's a great question. They aren't harmed by fire. fire. In fact, they seem to have power over it. So this made us think of the premiere and the evil cold that allowed fire to give no warmth to Galadriel's army. And they certainly aren't heroes as they proceed to do this. Just in case this episode didn't have enough shadow and flame for you. If you ask us, these are the three dark worshippers of Sauron. Tolkien wrote often of the dark worship happening for both Morgoth and Sauron, and cults grew up around both figures. These mystic cult figures could either be looking for Sauron or currently be in his service.
Well, what do they want?
Well, they don't like anything to do with the stranger. If he is who we think he is, then Sauron and his followers would want to cut off any Maiar sent to Middle-earth before they fully came into their powers. The constellation connection would fit into this theory, as in if the stranger is who we think he is, then he was sent to Middle-earth to act as a direct enemy to Sauron.
So they're magical members of a Sauron cult.
Or a Morgoth/Melkor cult, because the show is likely going to depict dark worship of Melkor at some point in the future. Either way, these three are playing at MSG next week. When Elendil struggles with Isildur's horse, Beric, we are reminded once again of the bond with horses that men of Westerness can achieve. Elendil has no choice but to set the horse free. And we'd bet good money that this is because the horse is the only one who senses that Isildur is still alive. He is not about to leave him behind. And even though this only happened in the movie, this definitely reminds us of the horse Brago saving Aragorn when everybody thought that he was dead. Just like everyone else in this episode, Elendil thinks over everything he's done since he pulled Galadriel from the water, and thinks,
I've made a huge mistake.
He and the Queen aren't just going to leave the surviving Southlanders to fend for themselves. A garrison will be left behind and they'll be taken care of. Now this makes sense, as in Tolkien's writing, Numenor began to have several outposts of varying size in Middle-earth. The Numenorians also traveled to Middle-earth to battle the forces of Sauron more than once, and it looks like the show is going to have them do so again based on what Queen Muriel says here.
Numenor will return.
And when they come to Middle-earth, they often fight alongside elves, so this retort makes sense too.
Then the elves will be ready.
Gil-galad is gonna love that she promised that. Now there are already old Numenorian colonies here as it turns out, as Bronwyn says that herself, Arondir, and the others will make way for Peligr. An important location in Tolkien's writing, Peligr will be a home base for the faithful of Numenor, and will eventually become the chief port of Gondor. When Largo Brandyfoot tries to pep up the Harfoots with this,
We're Harfoots! Look, we don't slay dragons, but there's one thing we can do, I warn. We stay true to each other.
We couldn't help but think of Meriadoc Brandybuck in the movie Return of the King.
I'm a hobbit, and I know I can't save Middle-earth. I just want to help my friends.
We face it, with our hearts even bigger than our feet.
Good boy, high five. This prompts a little fellowship to rise up and decide to go and help the stranger. Poppy has almost gone full Samwise Gamgee as well.
She won't be alone.
And I'm coming with you!
And soon it's fairly close to this.
Wait, we're coming too!
With Sadoc going with them as their wise leader, this new fellowship is off, and they just keep walking.
What about Halbrand?
Ah, yes, thank you. I knew I was forgetting something. Galadriel thought he was dead, but the man who launched 1,000 fan theories is still alive and recovering from a wound. He needs elvish medicine, so Galadriel is going to take him to Lindon. Now, it might just be me, but his demeanor seems to have changed.
This is not over.
So you got a new theory?
I do. Hear me out.
I've got a theory.
Halbrand could be Sauron, but he didn't always know that he was Sauron. Sauron can change his form, and this form isn't necessarily the same as the beautiful Anatar. Adar thinks that he killed Sauron, and maybe he came close. But Sauron survived and found himself in the form of Halbrand, not really knowing at all that he was truly Sauron.
Sounds like a soap opera.
Traces are still there, such as his fascination with forging and spelling out his entire ring plan to Galadriel when they were in prison.
It seems to me that you do well to identify what it is that your opponent most fears. Give them a means of mastering it.
For all Halbrand knew, he was just the once and future king of the Southlands until Mount Doom erupted and he became aware of himself once more. Now he's headed for Lindon, Elf Central, and that would be an ideal place for the reveal to take place. Galadriel may not see it, but we can surely count on the Gil-galad of this series not to buy it.
Ooh, that's a good theory.
Or he's Halbrand, famous Tolkien character. Everybody loves the Sauron Halbrand theory, so I'm going to try to meet you halfway.
So hot right now.
Is Durin worried about failing his father? No, he's only worried about failing Elrond. His head may recognize his duty, but Disa is his heart. She's going to push him to help the elves anyway, and that will lead to them delving not greedily, but definitely deep.
That Mithril belongs to us, to you and me. And together one day, we are going to
mistaken.
Not great, Bob, because when King Durin tosses the Telltale Leaf into the hole before sealing up the Mithril outpost, we see what is waiting for the dwarves down in the depths of Khazad-dûm. It is Durin's Bane, the Balrog of Morgoth, the one that will lay the kingdom to ruin and eventually do battle with Gandalf the Grey. So when they unleash Shadow and Flame, just like everyone else on this show has done, Durin and Disa will have only one thing to say.
I've made a huge mistake.
Oh, and in case we didn't already know, Adar says that his new orc amusement park needs a new name, and for some reason, the name is not spoken. The on-screen location title, the Southlands, changes to Mordor. I mean, one does not simply rename Mordor with a title card. Like, why are all these cats still in here?
Well, I showed them my certificate from established titles, and now that I'm a lord, they want to borrow even more money. I don't know what to do.
Actually, I know what to do. Cats! You should all get established title certificates so you can be lords or ladies just like Doug. And all of you should click our link in the description to get your established title certificate today. Well, that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let us know in the comments below, or you can @ me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Arey.